office of President of the United States.
For democracy belongs to us all.
A government for our tomorrows.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
We gather because we have chosen hope over fear.
Because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Meet this moment as the United States of America.
Hello and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Aaron Blake, a senior political reporter here. I write for The Fix and I write the Campaign Moment newsletter. I'm also the co-host of the Campaign Moment podcast. I was digging through the archives the other day and I came across a story from October 2nd, 2005. The story was about a little known congressional candidate in southern Minnesota. He was a Iraq and Afghanistan veteran. He had been a number of those candidates who were running for office at the time, and he didn't seem to stand much of a chance. Well, he did win that election, and 19 years later, he is not only the governor of Minnesota, but he's also the chair of the Democratic Governors Association. Today, I'd like to welcome that man to Washington Post Live. Governor Tim Walz, welcome.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's good to talk to you again. It's been a while. But you know, with your national profile, I kind of wanted to dig in a little bit on the national political implications of the 2024 election. Can you tell me a little bit about your job at the DGA right now and how important it is to Democrats in the 2024 election?
Yeah, well, thanks for telling that history story too. I teach in school, coach in football, and came back. And I think governors' races are kind of that way. These are folks that are really in tune in their states, and we've got 11 races across the country. Obviously, premier races down in North Carolina, New Hampshire. But what happens with governors' races is this allows us to bring those issues closer to home because everything wants to be nationalized. Of course, in a presidential year, the attempt to nationalize those races is going to be strong. But I do think my job as chair of the DGA is to certainly raise money for candidates so they can get their message out, to provide resources to those candidates, whether it's training around communications, some of the polling, and also to provide some of the staff, because these are the grassroots campaigns that the way you win them. So my job is to get out there, assist those campaigns. They will run the campaign they feel is most appropriate and the one that they can win. DGA is there to make sure that that we're providing what they need, because I think we all know, especially now, Democratic governors are the firewall in the front line against some really bad stuff. I'm seeing governors surrounding me that have made abortion access basically criminal, making Minnesota an island of access in the Midwest. And so that's what we're seeing across the country.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up abortion access. You mentioned New Hampshire and North Carolina. I think pretty much everybody recognizes that those are the key states. Of course, not every state is holding a governor's election. Only 11 states are in a presidential election year. A lot of these races happen in the 2 years in between. So 2022 is the big year for governor's races. This one is a lesser one. Those are really the two big races that we're talking about. How do they differ? What are the issues that are important in New Hampshire, but maybe not so much in North Carolina? Are there issues that are universal to both of them that you're seeing your Democratic candidates really play up in those races? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's unique that we obviously don't have any incumbents this time. DGA has been able to reelect 26 out of 27 the last 10 years. We don't have that this time, but we do have in North Carolina is we have really successful outgoing governor in Roy Cooper, a two-term Democratic governor. North Carolina's economy is hot. They are thriving. So I think we have that going for us, but you do have a very clear contrast down there. You've got the current Attorney General in Josh Stein running against Mark Robinson. I don't know. I mean, even at the presidential level, I don't know if you could have a bigger contrast, an effective Attorney General in Josh Stein getting the work done. And you have an absolutist on the other side, an extremist, and abortion is going to be a big issue there because the Republican nominee, Mark Robinson, has made no exceptions for anything. He is just an absolutist on that. So that's going to be there. The economy continuing to move forward, the things that are on people's mind. In New Hampshire, you've got an opportunity for a pickup for Democrats, and you're going to see we've got a couple good candidates. They will pick who that is, and the Democrats will pick that later this summer. But the Republicans look like they're going to be with former Senator Kelly Ayotte, and I think once again the abortion issue will be big because your viewers would know that it was Kelly Ayotte who was the Sherpa for Neil Gorsuch to make sure he got through and got confirmed. So, when we see not just abortion restrictions, we see IVF and what we saw this week in Louisiana now moving towards medical access or in prescription drugs. So I think those things are there. And then it's the things that always come up in it's jobs, it's job creation. We're seeing low unemployment rates in both of those states, but I think you see a bit of an angst in the Northeast, and I think you're seeing our candidates talk a little bit about, look, we're going to have to figure out with an aging population, what's our workforce look like? Let's have an honest conversation around immigration that's not the fear mongering that we're going to see from Republican candidates. So it's going to be the economy. It's going to be the issues of personal freedoms and access. And then again, it's going to be hard to avoid the presidential in both of these states. They're both important.
I want to go back to North Carolina a little bit. This has drawn some comparisons to the Pennsylvania governor's race in 2022. You have a Democratic attorney general named Josh S., who is running. Same thing happened with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who was elected in 2022. But you also had a Republican nominee who had said some rather extreme things over the years. Mark Robinson is somebody who might have gone further than even a lot of these other Republican candidates who have underperformed in recent years with some of the things that he said about Jewish people, about abortion, about women. When you look at a race like that and you see these election results from the past in states like Pennsylvania, do you see that as kind of a race that you can almost take for granted because of these things that you have to work with? Or is it different because North Carolina is a little bit of a redder state than a state like Pennsylvania?
Yeah, you wished you could, Aaron, take them for granted because it's just absurd, the positions they have. My favorite with the Republican nominee in North Carolina is the most evil people on the planet are public school teachers, which I am one and take great offense to that. Just the attacks on all the things that feel normal and decent and the chaos, you can't take them for granted. But I do think Pennsylvania is a great example of what happens. The Republican Party can't help itself. They have to nominate these extremists. It's what they do. And at the end of the day, you find a lot of folks, those independents, center left, center right, that look at the decency and competency. And what you saw when you elected Josh Stein, you got that. And in the first weeks of his time as governor, the bridge collapse with the fire, with the truck hitting it, and you see Josh Stein orchestrate one of the fastest reconstruction projects that we've ever seen in a competent, effective manner that just resonated with folks in Pennsylvania. And so I think what we keep coming back to is people want to see competency, especially in their governors. And when you get these extreme positions that are the social division issues that they want to bring up. You've got Josh Stein, who cleared the backlog of rape cases in North Carolina and the rape kits that were waiting. You have Josh Stein dealing with just some of the basic things in life as Attorney General, consumer protection issues that people really appreciate. But yeah, I got to be honest with you. How this race is close is just a reflection on where our politics are in 2024. The good news is when you get this competency, when you run a good campaign, and when we get closer to Election Day, and I think the same thing will happen with the presidential race, people recognize the binary choice and the risk, and they will go with competency, decency over chaos, the division. You see the other side. So I think there's parallels here, but it'll be close.
So I mentioned the 2022 governor's races, specifically the one in Pennsylvania, but I wanted to also mention some of the 2023 races. Of course, not a very big year for governor's races, but there were a couple. Democrats did pretty well. They had a close race in Mississippi, a lot closer than usual. Of course, the big win for Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear being reelected. In a very tough state for Democrats. I think a lot of times we look at these, off year elections. Those odd numbered years are what we call off year elections, and we might read a little bit too much into them because there are bigger swings in those kinds of races. There's lower turnout. Strange things can happen. But is there something in those 2023 results that you can grab hold of and maybe tell you something about the environment right now that otherwise, according to the polls, looks pretty tough for Democrats?
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I don't, I, you know, the confirmation bias, I'll try and make the case that, yeah, these are, bellwethers for what's coming up. It's not totally true, but I think there's a bit of a canary in the coal mine. If I were the Republicans, I would think the thing that you found is that these extremist candidates are really make a tough time. And look, you have the most unpopular governor in Tate Reeves down there in Mississippi, and I think your viewers know this, but let it sink in. We were within 3 points of winning Mississippi, and DGA was down there to help what we could, and there's not a whole lot of state party infrastructure down there. In Kentucky, you got a great governor who was effective. And he's, built, again, much like Roy Cooper, a really strong economy from battery manufacturing to, a renaissance around auto manufacturing in Kentucky, and has done it with standing firmly with women's rights to have bodily autonomy, all the while dealing with tornadoes and every natural disaster you could possibly see. And so I think the message is, again, you get a good candidate who is competent, effective, compassionate, who's able to put together a good campaign, is well funded, you can make a run at these things. And I think our model has been that. We've got it in North Carolina, we've got it in New Hampshire, but more than that, we've got it in Montana, we've got it in Indiana, we've got it in Missouri. We're certainly going to be in Delaware and all those other places. So I do think that especially governor's races become much more provincial. They come much more about those, everyday issues, and the candidates really do matter. They really do matter, where it's not just, oh, it's generic Democrat, generic Republican. Like whenever they poll, we all lose to generic Republican. There's no such thing. The real ones are much weirder and ineffective. And I think that's the message we learned.
I wanted to bring in some recent reporting here. And, I mentioned the kind of national polls that we're seeing that aren't so great for Democrats right now. We're starting to see maybe a little bit more panic set in. There was a piece in Politico today that talked about a full-scale Democratic freakout taking place. There was an anonymous Democratic operative in that story that said, quote, "You don't want to be that guy who is on record saying we're doomed, or the campaign's bad, or Biden's making mistakes. Nobody wants to be that guy." I wonder, how concerned are you, and how much does the party just need to say these things out loud if they are panicking behind closed doors?
Well, look, that's nothing new. We're Democrats. That's just what they do. I know that guy. It's my brother-in-law, probably. That's what we just. But the stakes are really high, and they're feeling that the stakes are really high. And look, when inflationary pressures coming out of COVID and those types of things, they're real. People are feeling that angst. But I can't help but think, if I were Republicans, I would be freaking out. You've got a sideshow of Robert De Niro in front of a courthouse with Donald Trump being, accused of hush money covering of porn stars. It's not even like it's real. And so I think that Democrats are concerned just because the stakes are so high. But I think what I would tell those pundits, and a lot of times, if you're really freaking out, it's because you're not on the ground doing the work. You're not witnessing the 18 field offices opening up in Minnesota, the Biden Harris campaign not taking Minnesota for granted. It's going to be close out here. We're not a given. We have the longest record of voting for Democrats of any of the states because we made the wise choice for Walter Mondale. But in all those years since then, it's been close, and we worked hard. So my message to them is, this is not that unusual. What the polls are the polls, but listen to people. Make the case where Joe Biden is delivering, whether it's bringing bridges and construction jobs or the CHIPS Act, those type of things, and do the work. They're concerned.
You mentioned Minnesota there. I
Aaron.
thought that was really interesting. This strikes me as a state that, if Republicans are winning the state, the election's basically lost. It's been a swing state in the past, as you mentioned, but it's certainly been in the blue camp for a lot of years. I think it's a little bit deceiving to say going back to Richard Nixon, because Walter Mondale was a Minnesotan when he won that state in 1984. But do you see this as being a state that the Biden campaign is actually going to have to invest real resources in to protect it? I mean, is that really actually the case?
Sure, they're investing here, but the good news is that the party on the ground, and we're doing that. I tell people my polling in the spring of 2022 had us behind. We end up winning by about 8 points. A landslide in Minnesota is 8 points. This race will probably be a little closer than that, but they're not taking it for granted. They're investing. They have put the best people. They've hired the best people out here, folks that are well known amongst Minnesotans. We will have the field offices. This will not be a mistake of just candidly where there wasn't that investment in 2016. When we did invest in 2020, President won by 7.5 points. And that was, even with us not being able to use our machine of door knocking and the Democratic Farmer Labor Party's, well-oiled machine to get out and work. But they're not taking it for granted, and they shouldn't. And I agree with you on this. If Minnesota goes, it's a very hard path to get there. That's why I think you're seeing good numbers coming out of Wisconsin. I know that Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan will do the work. Josh Shapiro, who we mentioned earlier in Pennsylvania, the Blue Wall, the Great Lakes will hold. But the campaign is taking it seriously. They're investing resources, which I think for those folks who in the Politico terms were freaking out, just look at the fundamentals. Just look at the fundamentals. Look out there. There's not a Trump field office. The Republican Party in Minnesota, last time they filed their financial returns, had $52 in the bank. And they haven't won a statewide race here since 2006. So this is about doing the fundamentals. But yeah, I think when you're hearing that Minnesota, that we take it seriously, we do. My hope is the Trump campaign spends a lot of money here, which takes money away from North Carolina, which takes money from somewhere else.
One of the reasons that Democrats are concerned, and I think this is something that's really borne out in all the polls. You can take issue with a given poll, and it could be off by a few points here or there. But one thing that we see pretty consistently in these surveys is that President Biden is doing worse than your usual Democratic presidential candidate among Black voters, among Hispanic voters, among young voters. Do you have any idea why that is?
Well, and I don't want to dismiss the polls, and I don't want to be that guy. So I always think when you say, look, the only poll that matters is election day, that's usually when you're losing. When people say that, so I do
we can
think
agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's time here, and I think with the former president being in court with the focus on that the binary choice hasn't come home to roost with people yet. That the idea that, look, I might not be totally enamored, but my God, the choice is unbelievable. And I think with young people, we should very much listen to them. I've got a 23-year-old who's lived through this. Look, she was born a few months before September 11th. She was in grade school during the wars in the Middle East and Afghanistan. The Great Recession came along. President Obama was when she was in middle school, kind of going there. Then we had COVID. Here in Minnesota, we had George Floyd and a racial reckoning. There has been a lot of chaos and whiplash amongst these folks. And I think trying to have them understand that just, well, maybe it doesn't matter if we go for a change. It does matter. As far as Black voters, I think there's a strong case to be made. And my friend Wes Moore in Maryland's talked to me about this. Democratic Party's doing a lot of good things around this. But the one thing is, I think especially amongst Black men, is they hear this idea that they're somehow broken, and so we should get their vote because we restored the right to felons to vote, which is a good thing. It's a positive thing. But a lot of my friends who are entrepreneurs don't need to have their right restored to vote. They need access to capital, and they need their schools to be delivering for their children as well as they're delivering for my children. And I think some of that is that no one's really talked about this, and this issue's gotten a little bit worse. And I think once we get closer to the election, once the campaign starts to hone in, you see the president focusing on these groups, and we need to talk honestly to them. And then with Hispanic voters, we need to have an honest conversation about all of the things that they care about. And that includes immigration, a real conversation about how do we secure the border, but at the same time, celebrate, the immigrant community we have here and understanding we need it for the economy. So we've got time. This isn't the freak out weeks in front of the election, but again, I would make the case of this. So if you're not really happy with Joe Biden, that guy is the answer on the other side. That guy who tells you don't matter, that guy who wants a Muslim ban, that guy. So I think that's what we're up against.
We're having some technical difficulties with our connection. We are working to get it back up as soon as possible. Please stay tuned. about some of those technical difficulties, Governor. You mentioned the Trump trials, and I want to turn to that in just a moment, and some of those other questions about like the Republican side of the aisle. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, uh, given President Biden's unpopularity, is this somebody who you foresee your candidates in some of these key races campaigning with ahead of the November election?
Well, each of them will make their own mind up. I certainly would encourage them to do so. I think this idea that you're somehow going to separate yourself, that never works anyway. And I think people appreciate loyalty. I think they appreciate, again, we're making the case. And I think if you look at the data, the president has delivered. And understanding that popularity piece, that's for the historians a little bit more, I guess, but each will make up their own mind. We tell these candidates to decide themselves, but I would certainly encourage them to do so. Talk about what the federal government has been able to do, even with a House of Representatives that's not collaborative, but that's up to them.
I thought it was really interesting that you brought up Donald Trump's trial. Of course, that's in closing arguments today. It will go to the jury after that, means we could see a verdict in a matter of days or possibly weeks. This has not been something that the Biden campaign has talked about. They've seemingly kind of let this all take place, and maybe they'll speak about it afterwards. I think President Biden is going to be delivering some kind of an address after the verdict is out. Do you envision this being a big part of Democrats' 2024 campaign, and they're just kind of seeing how it all shakes out for now, or is this something that is best left for the justice system?
I think it's the latter, and that's what I've taken on this. And I only bring it up because it's just chaos, and it seems surreal to me that this is actually happening. But it needs to happen. I mean, the justice system, I trust it. I trust not just the jurors, I trust the prosecutors, I trust the defense, the judges. And I think for many of us are just very uncomfortable with watching how the former president has politicized the entire issue, has demonized and undermined, which is kind of his MO, to just undermine the establishment of our institutions. And so I have always said from the very beginning, I said it here when people were trying to disqualify the former president from the ballot, that was the wrong decision. We just need to beat him at the ballot box. And I think Americans will decide on that. I don't know how it'll play out. I think you could game out the scenarios if he's acquitted, if it's a hung jury, if he's convicted, how that all works. It doesn't really matter to the Trump people because they're just using it as chaos. I think the Biden people are doing it the right way. Justice will speak, and we'll honor that. I don't have to agree with it. I don't agree with many of the decisions coming out of the current Supreme Court, but you will never hear me undermining their authority to make those decisions.
Does kind of keeping that hands-off approach, though, seed the battlefield a little bit? I mean, Donald Trump is out there every day at the courthouse saying things about these proceedings. He's putting these things out on social media, really defining these things in ways that he prefers. And we don't see somebody who kind of has that bully pulpit, that national platform, who's driving a concerted message on the other side about these things.
Yeah,
do you worry about that at all, that this is kind of a one voice debate that's happening at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a really astute observation. I think it's a reality, and I think it's what we're up against. And I heard this: do Democrats, are too timid? Do they wear kid gloves on this? I think one of the burdens we bear is that we defend our institutions and we defend the democracy. If it's all, if it's burn it all down and who cares, which we're seeing on the other side, that might work. I'm very uncomfortable. I would be very uncomfortable criticizing the judge or the jurors in a trial that's going on and making this circus atmosphere around it. So yeah, you're probably right. And I think they're getting their news, and Donald Trump saying it's a witch hunt, and folks who aren't real familiar with the system and don't see this. And I think the Biden administration candidly has taken this approach on many things. They've not been politicized. In fact, it's just the opposite. They kept hands off at the Justice Department, but that doesn't make any difference to Donald Trump. He talks about it being weaponized when people are just doing their job. So, Aaron, I think your assessment is right. I think, yes, it probably does hurt, but I think there's a responsibility to defend the democracy and the institutions and the judicial branch. And I would assume that's, I think, the reason many of us aren't out there doing that criticism is the same reason that the Biden folks aren't either. They believe it's important to defend the democracy.
Let's move ahead 4 years beyond 2024 to 2028. You're working with a lot of governors who could be contenders the next time we come around. There will be a new Democratic nominee in 2028, almost assuredly. You've mentioned that this could be a sitting governor. You think that's something that makes sense for the party right now. And I wondered if there are certain people who you think really fit the bill. And I don't want you to be coy and worry about playing favorites. Are there colleagues of yours that you really see kind of, who really fit that bill?
Yeah, and look, I am biased because I've done the job and I served 12 years in Congress, and there are members of Congress and members of the Senate and the administration, but I think governors, especially those governors who lived through COVID, those governors that had to deal with the not just ineffective but the counter effective Trump administration. And I point to those that I got close with. I see Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, and just strong contenders. I know that, governing a state like California with Gavin Newsom takes a whole nother level. You got J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, who's doing amazing things. And then we've got, up and comers. We've got Wes Moore and Josh Shapiro and Andy Beshear. We got Mara Healey. I just think the bench is incredibly deep of folks who are there. I think governors bring a different perspective. They tend to have, just the nature of it, higher approval ratings because people see them every day dealing with things that really matter. They see them in their schools. They see them out on the streets. They see them at sporting events. And I have to tell you, I've been so impressed. And I've just been impressed with that whole group of folks you're talking about. They have put everything else aside, all ego and everything, just to do what's right for the country. And they're all supporting the president. They're all supporting the president's reelection to get this done. And I don't see that maneuvering to try and get a leg up on someone else. So I think all those folks, and we may get a few more that emerge out of this. But these are ones I work with daily. We talk a lot. They're helpful to one another. I think they'd make great president.
A few more that could emerge out of this. I think one of our readers had a suggestion for who that might be. It's a woman named Judy Herink. She's from your birth state of Nebraska. We won't tell people that you weren't born in Minnesota. But she suggests that maybe a Governor Tim Walz could be involved in this process. She said, would you consider running for president yourself? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, Judy, us Cornhuskers do stick together, coming from Butte. Look, what I've always said, and I don't mean being coy, I couldn't have never imagined myself doing this. I never imagined running for office. I was in my 40s, as you said, and tried to go to a rally, and the next thing I know, I'm being recruited to run for Congress. I'll serve the way I can serve. I had a friend always tell me, don't ever turn down a job you haven't been offered. But I will have to say, it just seems a bit overwhelming to think about when someone tells you they want to be the president or whatever. That always kind of scares me, but I'll serve in any way that I can. And I appreciate Judy saying so. There's a Nebraska and a Minnesota kind of humbleness, but if I can serve, and I think we've done well in Minnesota, I'll be honest. I think we've done well on getting things done. We have an agenda that is, I think, the envy of the country in many ways, leading on climate change, leading on children's nutrition, those types of things. So we'll see how it plays out.
Lastly, I wanted to just ask you real quickly about something that happened last week. You put out a very interesting document that declared it to be, quote, Wolves Back Day. This is, of course, a reference to the Minnesota Timberwolves making their second Western Conference Finals in history of the program. You did it in a way that had a slightly vulgar hidden message, which I would encourage people to check out. But since then, we've seen my Timberwolves lose 3 straight games. And I'm worried maybe that you might have jinxed things a little bit. But on the assumption that you were not a jinx, I wanted to see if you had any advice for how the Wolves can turn it around tonight in Game 4.
Well, thanks for asking, Aaron. That's right. And from Naz Reid to Ant and Kat, this team has just inspired all of us. And I remind people, Luka and Kyrie are first ballot Hall of Famers. We are not playing some weak team here in Dallas, but I hope I didn't curse it. We're going to win this thing in Dallas. We'll come back for Game 5 in Minneapolis, but I have to tell you, I'm unabashed. I believe sports is part of life. I coached everything when I was in high school. Also did theater. Helped my wife with speech and things. I think in a time when everybody's pretty down on things and where it seems like the world is very chaotic, there's joy in sport. There is joy in state kind of rallying around this, and we got to at least get one win because I am hearing the jinx thing, and I'll own that.
Well, let's hope we have at least a little bit of joy. I'll be watching tonight. Governor Tim Walz, unfortunately, we are out of time, so we'll have to leave it right there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron.
And thanks to all you viewers for joining us too. For more of these important conversations, sign up for a Washington Post subscription. Get a free trial by visiting washingtonpost.com/live. That's washingtonpost.com/live. I'm Aaron Blake, and thanks for joining us.